Hello and welcome to episode 9 of OPERAVISION's Next Generation series. I'm Nina Brazier, a stage director based in Frankfurt, and over this series we've been diving into 4 European young artist programmes, exploring how the opera world is developing and nurturing the next generation of talent. From Opera for Peace to the Accademia Rossiniana at the Rossini Opera Festival, to the Palau de les Arts in Valencia and the Opera Studio at Oper Frankfurt. We have backstage access to masterclasses, concerts, rehearsal spaces and dressing rooms to find out how the singers negotiate the physical and emotional highs and lows while exploring their unique operatic voice. Recently, we've been having deeper conversations with some young artists, experts and alumni. And today, we're with the Rossini Opera Festival Young Artist Baritone, Stefan Astakov, and our expert is the Italian tenor and coach, Luca Canonici. Today, we'll be hearing how letting go of technique can help on the day of your audition, how to cope when you're surrounded by people with more experience than you, and the importance of connecting with your own unique voice rather than trying to copy others. As always, let's hear some opening words from our 2 guests.
The best way to get out on stage on the competition is forget everything that you've been doing all before, that the months or weeks of preparation for the competition. Just get out and just give your soul to the public.
The young people tell me, yes, maestro, I understand. Yes, maestro, I understand, but you don't understand nothing.
More on that in a bit. Let's start with Stefan. We caught up between my home in Frankfurt and his in Vienna. I would love to take you back right to the beginning of your operatic journey. What would you say was your earliest experience of opera as you were growing up?
So my father is also an opera singer. He's a bass. And from my childhood, or even since I was born, I was hearing operatic music or classical music all the time. And my first earliest experience of opera was when I was 3 or 4 years old. I don't remember exactly. When I sang my first ever concert on stage, and I sang Gremin's aria "Любви все возрасты покорны" in a concert, and my mother was accompanying me on the piano.
Do you have a memory at that age of whether you understood what you were singing about?
Not really. I was very shy about the lyrics because the lyrics said about love, and I was quite shy to sing it.
And when was the point, obviously you started very, very young, but when was the point for you felt like opera could really be a viable career for you?
Well, I was singing throughout my childhood, but then I made a break. And of course, like at the age of 12, 13, 14, I had doubts about singing, whether I really wanted to do it. But then I started singing again. And then I really felt that it is my destiny to sing opera.
Now, I was researching for our conversation and I was reading about the extraordinary number of competitions you've won and been a finalist in. It's really, really extraordinary. How would you say your approach to singing in competitions has perhaps changed over the years?
I did my first competition, I think, at 5. It was like a children competition. And then again at 10 or 11 in Germany, I think it was the Bundeswettbewerb Gesang for children or something. And my approach, of course, changed dramatically throughout this whole time. It first went from fear of getting out on stage. And slowly the confidence grows, of course. And in the beginning, of course, I was thinking a lot about the technique, the lyrics, the music, not to forget anything. But the realization came, maybe I think in the Hertogenbosch competition that I did in 2018 or 19, that the best way to get out on stage on the competition is forget everything that you've been doing all before, that the months or weeks of preparation for the competition. Just get out and just give your soul to the public and not even think about the jury.
That sounds like such a healthy approach. And was that something that came easily to you, or did you have to really consciously think, okay, forget everything, put that behind me?
Well, it just kind of clicked in one moment, and I understood that this is the way, generally not only for competitions, but also on performing in concerts and on stage in performances. Before, that was just thinking on how to sing, where I put my larynx, where I put the sound and stuff like that. And this was the way to go.
And do you think, having that approach, you perhaps need to have all the technical things in place, of course, to be able to forget it, because then you're not worrying about, the position of your larynx?
Yeah. Of course. Usually it was a month, maybe, or 1.5 months before the competition. I was preparing every day and for several hours, singing and repeating and studying. And 1 week before, it's good to leave everything behind and just chill out, calm down, and forget everything that you've done. Because at that point, everything that you have studied or studied technically is already in your muscle memory.
A quando penso a quello svenimento, mi vien proprio da ridere. La cagion delle smanie, indovinar chi mai potuto avria. Ognuno nel mondo ha un ramo di pazzia. Si dimostra gran gabbia, ben si può chiamare nonno. Forse appunto perché mondo questa quadra non mi sta, questa quadra non mi sta, oh, questa quadra non mi sta, oh, questa quadra non mi sta, questa quadra non mi sta.
That was Stefan singing Barono di Trombonok's aria, Si di matti una gran gabbia, from Il Viaggio a Reims at the Accademia Rossiniana last summer. Meanwhile, over in Pesaro, Luca is in the middle of auditioning candidates for the Accademia Rossiniana's programme this summer. And to be honest, it sounds like a packed schedule.
It's okay, but it's too much people to listening. 50 singers each day for 3 days is really too much.
Wow, that is a lot. And is it difficult, or is it very easy to pick out the voices you think that will suit the Rossini repertoire?
Yeah, Rossini is so difficult for the boys because the legato and also the coloratura, he wants to find the right technique for this.
I first met the young baritone Stefan Astakov at last year's Rossini Opera Festival. He knows only too well how competitive these programmes can be, but he was successful at both the Accademia Rossiniana and on the Vienna Staatsoper's Young Artist programme. What has he learnt about that moment when you step out in front of a panel?
It is difficult to not to overthink to the whole situation or to think what you say, how you say it, how you behave. It is just better, really, well, it is easy to say, but to relax and not to think about anything, how you will say. Just go with the flow and be as open as possible, because that is also important for the panel. The panel would not want someone to go on stage and see someone being stressed out or shaking of fear of what to say. It is quite a similar approach to my approach to competitions as well. To leave everything behind and go out and go with the flow. To see the panel as your colleagues and your friends and be friendly and open.
And do you have for yourself, but a sort of routine that you would do on the day of, say, an audition or a competition or something like that? Is there anything that you sort of have to do on those days in preparation to feel that relaxed and to feel that you can go with the flow in that way?
Well, if the audition is in the morning, I of course try to wake up at least like 4 hours before the audition and to have a coffee, eat breakfast, to warm up very slowly, to warm up for 10 minutes, then take a break, then again 10 minutes, then to arrive at the place, to see what the place looks like where the audition is going to take place. Maybe, if possible, to try out the place itself, how the acoustics are, to see where it is better to stand, and to just let it go for the moment. There is a friend of mine actually who is in Frankfurt in the ensemble. It's Eric.
Ah, yes.
He told me, Eric van Heiningen. We had a production of Das Verratene Meer at the Vienna State Opera, and I was a bit stressed out and I was warming up all the time. And he told me a funny story of his, that his teacher told him that whenever he was warming up too much, he came up to him and said, "It won't help." and that's when I realized, it's actually correct.
What are Luca's expert tips for warming up?
Soprano is better to beginning with staccato. Up, 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 up. It's so important for the voice soprano to have this point of the voice. For the tenor, is better. For the loud voice or tenor or bass, it's better to begin with the legato.
When you begin to coach your young singers, do you first of all focus on technique or on the text and the meaning, or are you looking at the character?
Before singing the arias, technique is done. Therefore, 30 minutes more or less of vocalizations, study of the score above, all for the expressions written by the composer. Often, young people do not give weight to this precious advice.
What led Luca Canonici from his successful career as a tenor to coaching and training young singers?
So I believe that a singer who has had a career like mine has a duty to teach young people what he has learned in 40 years on a stage. It is not enough to have studied to teach opera singing. It is important that you have had a career in the theater.
What would you say are perhaps the biggest mistakes you notice that young singers make when they're first starting out?
The young singers listen to records, watch videos, and would like to have the dramatic tenor voice or dramatic soprano voice. They don't easily realize the voice they have, and that's it's not the power that makes your singer better. We have to deal with our qualities, our vocality, and try to sing with taste and be expressive. This is important for me.
I love that thought from Luca that artists need to work with their own qualities and not try to emulate other singers, something we've heard before from the emerging artist Yolissa Anna back in episode 1. And when you're working with young singers, does that mean the feelings and the character of the role, is that something that comes later?
The character of the role is really important, but before. So you studying the role, when you have the history of the role, that's really important. The relation with the music.
The idea of integrating the character from the outset is something I'm definitely in favour of. The Accademia Rossiniana, as you might imagine, places a real emphasis on understanding the historical context of the opera and the characters that inhabit it from the very start of preparing a role. As you coach young artists and help them in their development, is there anything you think you wish you'd known yourself or that you had had a chance to be coached on when you were first starting out as a young singer?
I was the last pupil of Tito Gobbi, the great baritone, who gave me advice for a year before he died. I would have liked to have him by my side to be able to take advantage of his advice again, especially as an actor when he was unsurpassed. I could have asked him how to do many roles with his drama as Scarpia, or with the lightness with which he faces Falstaff. Incredible role, title role.
And when you think back to working with him, what are one or two, you mentioned there how good he was in informing the acting side. What was it that was so helpful about him to you? Was it to do with the characterization or the way he approached music? What do you remember about his words of advice?
I have studied for the first time with him Elemento di Federico from Arlesiana. It was fantastic because he's singing with me the aria and gave me more important reflection. He tell me, if you want to have one good reason for the people listen you, if you want to do a piano, you do before forte, because you sing it always piano. People don't know the difference. So the contrary also. If you want to have a big forte, you do singing piano before.
As regular listeners will know, this came up in our episodes with Opera for Peace earlier in the series, where the emerging artist Leonardo Sanchez and tenor Larry Brownlee talked about the challenges of creating these stark contrasts in volume over a sustained period of time. Meanwhile, since Stefan and I last spoke last summer, he's gone from being a young artist at the Vienna Staatsoper to a fully fledged member of the ensemble. For anyone not familiar with that system, prevalent here in Germany and Austria, opera houses have a group of singers of different voice types who are based at the opera house and paid a salary. They're given a range of different roles throughout each season and also have the opportunity, if and when it fits, to take on guest roles at other houses. I asked Stefan, thinking back to your experience at the Rossini Opera Festival and the Accademia Rossiniana last summer, of course, a gloriously intense couple of months in Pesaro, I'm wondering, was there anything that you learnt there that you've been able to apply to your singing outside of the context of the festival?
Of course. It was for the first 2 weeks. We had the opportunity to work with Maestro Palacio, and I have brought the aria of Figaro, Largo factotum, to the course, and I could work on it with the teachers there. And I have found so many things that could be done additionally to what I have learned before, and I could apply this not only in the aria, but generally in the whole Rossini singing, just to keep it a bit lighter and full of humor. And this also applies to the acting as well, because we had also the opportunity to see the shows at the Rossini Opera Festival, the La Gazzetta, Otello and Contori. And it was also great to see the Rossini masters doing it live in front of you and how it is done best. And this, of course, helped me to see what I can do better in singing and generally performing Rossini.
And of course, since then you have performed the role, is that right? How did that come about?
It was actually a huge surprise. Like maybe 1 or 2 days after Christmas, I got a notice that I would probably be jumping in as Figaro, and I needed to return immediately to Vienna and we then had rehearsals. And yeah, it was, of course, a great experience. It was really my dream come true to sing the role of Figaro. But at the same time, it was also quite a stressful and nervous situation because I have never done this role before. And amongst me were people who sang these roles many times, like Paolo Bordogna was singing the role of Don Bartolo. And he is just one of the best Rossini performers ever up who are living today. And yeah, it was a great experience.
Yeah, that is wonderful. And I'm thinking about that experience when you do have these incredibly established performers singing around you. Is it difficult? Do you feel you have to continually prove yourself? Or were you able to have that quality of being relaxed and letting go and just getting on with it?
Well, I had the luck of seeing the production being staged in the beginning 1.5 years ago, I think, and when the director was there. And I, of course, had some preview of what it is like, and I was in the rehearsals as well, and I could see all the singers develop this production as well, and I could also learn from it. And of course, there is this thought if I can do it on the same level. And for me personally, it was the feeling was there on the first performance, but it gradually went down and was non-existent by the third performance, probably.
And of course, thinking about from the outside world, we see these young artist programs as being such a wonderful opportunity to highlight talent, to develop craft and technique, of course, and a big stepping stone, a huge stepping stone into the opera world beyond. But on this podcast, we do, of course, like to talk about the really challenging aspects of your journey. And I wonder what has for you been the most difficult or challenging part of being on a young artist program?
The challenging part, I think, is again, not to overthink the whole situation and not to put up too much pressure and responsibility on yourself. Of course, it is important to study all the roles and get the best result out of yourself. But it is also important not to get into pressuring yourself and being too harsh on yourself, not to close yourself in an emotional cage.
You mentioned, of course, at the beginning, your father is an opera singer. You do come from a musical family. Do you have a sense of pressure from your parents about living up to certain expectations, or how does that work?
No. My parents have always been very, very, very supportive, and I've had lessons with my dad since my childhood, of course, and they have always been very, very supportive, and I never felt any pressure from them.
Per un barbiere di qualità. Oh, bravo Figaro, bravo, bravissimo, bravo. La. Fortunatissimo per verità, bravo. La. Fortunatissimo per verità. Fortunatissimo per verità.
That was Stefan singing Largo al factotum from Rossini's Barbiere di Siviglia at the Accademia, accompanied on the piano by Rubén Sánchez. Thinking of those challenges that young artists face, I asked Luca, what would you say are the key 1 or 2 things that young artists should think about when they're planning their future career, if they're planning their future career?
I think listening to the conductor and the director, because they could be right, even if it doesn't seem like it.
And I'm thinking about your work as a coach with young singers. What is the best part about seeing your young singers improve?
For me, the maximum is the legato and the interpretation. That's so important when the student understands the meaning of what he sings.
What is the most difficult or frustrating thing about coaching young singers?
The most frustrating for part of teacher's job for me is when you think the gist of your words and the next time they make the same mistakes again.
Yeah.
Sometimes the students' insecurity leads to listening to everyone's suggestions rather than just listening to the advice and one's teacher. That's difficult.
Let's get back to Stefan. I know you must have had some other extraordinary highs, both at the Accademia Rossiniana and in Vienna. Mm-hmm. Aside from that wonderful moment where you took the stage as Figaro, what would be perhaps another of your favourite moments that will really stay with you?
I think there are 2 highlights. The singing at the Teatro Rossini, at this great historical stage, and of course singing on the balcony of the house of Rossini. There was a short concert organized by the Accademia Rossiniana, and we sang an aria off the balcony of Rossini's house, and there was a crowd gathering just on the streets, and Rubén was playing the piano. And it was a great experience just to sing off a balcony, and to see from the left side you would see the main square of Pesaro, and on the right side you would have the sea, and downstairs you would have all the people looking up to you and listening to the singing.
And on that balcony, as you might already have imagined, Stefan sang Largo al factotum from Rossini's Barbiere di Siviglia. Before we go, let's hear what both of my guests would do to make the opera world a better place. First, Luca.
I wish there were competent people directing the theatre. Perhaps opera singers like here in Pesaro, where Ernesto Palacio and Juan Diego Flores have an extraordinary season. Always bureaucratic, stay in a chief, a director, a sovrintendente in the theater, but don't know really the word of opera. It's so important. Have a very conoscenza for the opera, not only the music.
And Stefan?
To be more supportive to each other, to be a real team player and not to see each other as competition, and to see each other as friends, because in the end we all do the same job, and we all perform on stage, and that is our second home. And to be friendly and make a friendly environment, and environment in which you would come again and again with a feeling of happiness and fun, and not with a feeling of coming to a place where there are enemies around you.
Thank you so much to Stefan Astakov and Luca Canonici for joining me today on OperaVision, and thanks to you for listening. There's plenty more online at operavision.eu, where you can see Cendrillon by Viaggio in the performance from the Palau de les Arts, and the Opera Studio Soirée with young artists from Oper Frankfurt, directed for the screen by me and Anskia Mattisson. I'll link to those in the show notes and give details on all the other music extracts you heard in this episode. We'll be back with Opera for Peace following their Academy in Paris on Thursday, the 1st of June. This series is edited and produced by Karen Piri and curated and hosted by me, Nina Brazier. OperaVision is co-funded by the European Commission.